The fluorescent lights of the conference room hummed, casting a sterile glow on the polished table and the faces gathered around it. Outside, the late afternoon sun glinted off the glass and steel canyons of Midtown Manhattan, a breathtaking view that felt utterly disconnected from the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. This was at the quarterly strategy review presentation to the executive leadership team at Sterling Corp., a massive old-school financial services firm trying, somewhat awkwardly, to embrace innovation. I was a senior manager in the product development department, a role that involved a lot of research, analysis, and trying to bridge the gap between what our clients needed and what our legacy systems could actually deliver. For the past 6 months, I'd been working on a project that I genuinely believed could revolutionize how we interacted with our small business clients. My idea was to create a streamlined, intuitive digital platform that integrated banking, lending, and advisory services, leveraging AI to provide personalized recommendations and automate tedious tasks. It wasn't just an incremental improvement. It was a fundamental shift in our approach, moving from transactional interactions to a holistic, value-driven relationship. I had poured my heart and soul into this concept. I'd conducted countless client interviews, built detailed financial models projecting significant ROI, and worked closely with a small, dedicated team of engineers to create a proof-of-concept prototype that was genuinely impressive. This platform, which I'd internally code-named Catalyst, was my baby. I saw it as the future of our small business division. The presentation was being led by Mark, a director in our department. Mark was charismatic, a smooth talker, and excellent at navigating corporate politics. He was also notoriously skilled at delegating the actual work and then stepping in at the last minute to take the credit. He'd been nominally overseeing my Catalyst project, attending a few meetings, offering high-level strategic feedback that mostly amounted to restating my own points and generally staying out of the weeds. He trusted me to deliver the substance, and I, perhaps naively, trusted him to represent the project fairly. The presentation began. Mark gave a polished overview of the department's achievements over the quarter, using all the right buzzwords. Then, it was time for the future initiatives. He clicked to a slide with the heading Innovating for Small Business Clients, my section. My idea. I took a deep breath and started explaining the vision for Catalyst. I talked about the pain points of our current small business clients, the market opportunity, and how a truly integrated digital platform could be a game changer. I showed screenshots of the prototype, walked them through the user journey, and presented the compelling ROI projections. I spoke with passion and conviction because I truly believed in what I was presenting. The executives were leaning forward, asking engaged questions. I felt a surge of hope. This was landing. As I finished explaining the core concept and the potential impact, Mark stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder in a gesture that felt less like support and more like possession. "Thank you, Emily," he said, his voice smooth and confident, addressing the executives. "Emily and her team have done some excellent groundwork on this, really dug into the data." He paused, then took over the clicker, advancing to the next slide, which was a high-level summary of the Catalyst concept, a slide he had created, simplifying my detailed analysis into bullet points. "But the real strategic insight here," Mark continued, his tone shifting, taking ownership, "is recognizing that our small business clients don't just need banking products. They need a partner. They need integrated solutions that simplify their financial lives. This platform, the Catalyst Initiative, is something I've been championing for the past year, seeing the gap in the market and pushing the team to explore this potential." He went on to elaborate on his vision for Catalyst, using the framework and the data I had provided, but framing it as his own strategic foresight. He talked about the high-level architecture he envisioned, the market positioning he had identified, the potential revenue streams he had projected. He spoke about the project as my initiative, my vision, something I believe will transform our approach, He didn't explicitly say I hadn't contributed, but by emphasizing his own role, his own championing of the idea, and by reducing my contribution to merely groundwork and data digging, he effectively erased my ownership of the core concept in the eyes of the executives. I stood there, frozen, the hand on my shoulder feeling like a physical restraint. My mind reeled. Was this happening? Was he really taking credit for my idea in front of everyone? The shock was quickly replaced by a burning, silent fury. I wanted to interrupt him, to shout, "That's not true. That's my idea. I built that." But I was in a boardroom in front of the company's top leadership. An outburst would be professional suicide. I forced myself to remain still, my hands clenched behind my back, my nails digging into my palms. I watched Mark confidently present, my work as his own, answering questions about the concept with the information I had compiled, basking in the positive reactions from the executives who were clearly impressed by the idea. It was a surreal, sickening experience. When the presentation finally ended and the executives began to disperse, offering congratulations to Mark, I felt a wave of nausea. Mark turned to me, that same smooth, confident smile on his face. "Great job on the data, Emily," he said, lowering his voice slightly. "Really solid analysis. Gave me a great foundation to work with." He said it as if he were complimenting a junior analyst on a minor task, not acknowledging the months of conceptual work, strategic thinking, and prototyping I had done. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice low and steady, devoid of emotion. "That wasn't just data, Mark. That was a fully developed product concept, a strategic vision, and a detailed implementation plan. That was my work." His smile faltered for a split second, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "Don't be dramatic, Emily. We all contributed. It's a team effort. I just presented it," he shrugged, dismissing my claim. "Anyway, the execs loved it. Looks like Catalyst is a go. Big win for the department." He walked away, already pulling out his phone, probably texting someone about his successful presentation. I stood alone in the empty conference room, the city lights outside now looking cold and distant. A big win for the department? No, a big theft. The days that followed were a blur of suppressed anger and quiet determination. Mark was suddenly the hero of the department. He was talking about his Catalyst initiative constantly, holding meetings, forming a core team to move the project forward. He was getting all the attention, all the praise. Meanwhile, I was expected to continue my regular duties, while also providing Mark with any additional data or information he needed for his project. It was agonizing. Every time I heard him talk about my vision or my strategy for Catalyst, I had to bite back a furious retort. Colleagues who knew how much work I had put into the project offered sympathetic glances or quiet words of support, but no one challenged Mark directly. "That's how it worked at Sterling Corp. You didn't rock the boat, especially not by challenging." Someone more senior who was currently in the executive's good graces. I knew I couldn't let this go, not just for the credit, but because I genuinely believed in Catalyst and knew that Mark, with his superficial understanding and lack of technical depth, would run it into the ground. He was great at presenting ideas, terrible at executing them. I didn't confront him again. I didn't go to HR. I knew how those things usually ended, with the junior person being labeled difficult or not a team player. Instead, I decided to fight this on my own terms, using my strengths: data, planning, and quiet competence. I started meticulously documenting everything related to Catalyst. Every email, every meeting note, every version of the prototype, every line of code I had overseen, every piece of client feedback I had gathered. I compiled a comprehensive timeline of the project's development, clearly showing my leadership and contributions at every stage. I didn't do this openly. I saved everything to a personal cloud storage account, building a digital fortress of evidence. While Mark was busy giving high-level instructions and attending celebratory lunches, I was quietly doing the real work. I continued to refine the technical specifications for Catalyst, anticipating the challenges we would face during implementation. I stayed in touch with the engineers, ensuring they were documenting their work thoroughly. I even continued having informal conversations with some of the small business clients who had participated in the beta testing, gathering more detailed feedback and building stronger relationships. Mark's leadership of the Catalyst initiative quickly hit predictable roadblocks. He lacked the technical understanding to make informed decisions about the platform's architecture. He didn't grasp the complexities of integrating with our legacy systems. He struggled to manage the engineering team, who were used to my hands-on, collaborative approach. He was all talk and no substance. The initial executive enthusiasm for Catalyst began to wane as the project stalled. Deadlines were missed. The engineering team became frustrated. The projected timeline for launch started slipping significantly. The executives who had been so impressed by the idea were now asking pointed questions about the lack of progress. Mark, in his updates, blamed the engineering team, blamed unexpected technical challenges, blamed anything but his own inability to lead the initiative. About 3 weeks after the disastrous presentation, I received an email from Sarah Jenkins, the Executive Vice President of Small Business Banking, one of the executives who had been most excited about Catalyst. She asked if I was available for a confidential meeting the following afternoon. My heart pounded. Confidential? I spent the night preparing, reviewing my documentation, anticipating what she might want to discuss. Was this about the project delays? Was it about Mark's performance? Or had she somehow pieced together what had really happened? The next afternoon, I sat in Sarah Jenkins' corner office, the view of the city even more stunning from this vantage point. She got straight to the point. "Emily," she said, her expression serious, "we're concerned about the Catalyst project. The progress is much slower than anticipated, and frankly, Mark's updates have been less than satisfactory. There seems to be a disconnect between the initial vision and the current execution." She paused, looking at me intently. "I remember your part of the presentation, Emily. Your explanation of the concept was incredibly clear and detailed. You seem to have a deep understanding of both the client needs and the technical requirements. More so, frankly, than Mark did." This was my opening. I took a deep breath. "Miss Jenkins," I said, choosing my words carefully, "I believe the challenges the project is facing stem from a lack of detailed understanding of the platform's architecture and the complexities of the integration. Building Catalyst requires more than just a high-level strategic overview. It requires a deep dive into the technical realities and a hands-on approach to problem-solving." I didn't explicitly accuse Mark, but the implication was clear. Miss Jenkins nodded slowly. "That aligns with what I've been sensing. Mark is good at the big picture, but perhaps not the best person to lead a complex technical implementation like this." She leaned forward. "Emily, how involved were you in the initial conceptualization and planning of Catalyst? Beyond the data analysis Mark mentioned?" This was it. I decided to be direct but professional. "Miss Jenkins, I led the conceptual development of Catalyst from the ground up. I conducted the client research, designed the core features, built the initial financial models, and oversaw the development of the proof of concept prototype. The strategic vision for the platform, the one presented last month, was developed entirely by me and my team." I paused, then decided to take a calculated risk. "I have comprehensive documentation of my work on the project, if you would like to see it, including early proposals, detailed design documents, and a timeline of development that clearly outlines my role." Sarah Jenkins looked at me for a long moment, her gaze sharp and assessing. A slow understanding dawned in her eyes. She didn't need to see the documentation. She had seen enough in the presentation, and she was seeing enough now in my directness and confidence. She understood. "Thank you, Emily," she said softly. "That clarifies things considerably." The conversation shifted. We talked about the technical challenges, the implementation plan I had refined, the resources needed. It felt less like an interview and more like a strategy session. By the end of the meeting, The air in the room had shifted. "Emily," Miss Jenkins said, standing up, signaling the meeting was over. "I appreciate your honesty and your clear understanding of this project. I'll be discussing this with Mr. Thompson and the board. You'll hear from us soon." I left her office, my head spinning. I had told the truth, laid out my claim. Now, I just had to wait. The call came 2 days later. It was Mr. Thompson's executive assistant. Mr. Thompson wanted to see me in his office immediately. Walking to the CEO's office felt like walking into the unknown. Had I gone too far? Had I jeopardized my career by challenging the established hierarchy? Mr. Thompson was waiting for me, along with Sarah Jenkins. They both looked serious. "Have a seat, Emily," Mr. Thompson said. He didn't waste time on small talk. "Sarah has spoken to me about the Catalyst project, and specifically, about your role in its development." He paused, his gaze steady. "We've also reviewed some of the documentation you mentioned to Sarah. It's clear that your contribution to this initiative was far more significant than was presented in the recent board meeting. Frankly, it's clear that Catalyst was your idea, developed and driven by you." He leaned forward. "The project is currently stalled under Mark's leadership. We need someone who can get it back on track, someone who understands the vision and has the technical and leadership capabilities to execute it." He took a breath. "Effective immediately, Mark is being reassigned to a different role. We would like to offer you the position of Director, Product Development for Small Business Solutions. You will report directly to Sarah, and your primary responsibility will be to lead and successfully launch the Catalyst platform." My breath hitched. Director? Taking over Mark's role? Leading the very department that housed my stolen idea? It was more than I had dared to hope for. "Mr. Thompson, Miss Jenkins," I said, my voice filled with emotion. I accept. I am fully committed to making Catalyst a success." A genuine smile finally appeared on Mr. Thompson's face. "We know you are, Emily. That's why we're giving you the job. You built the idea. Now go build the reality." I left the CEO's office, the city lights outside now looking brilliant and full of possibility. 1 month ago, Mark had stood in front of the executives and taken credit for my work, calling me a mere data digger. He thought he had made me invisible, but by doing so, he had inadvertently created the conditions for my rise. His inability to execute the idea he had stolen highlighted the very expertise he had dismissed in me. Walking back to what was now my department, I saw Mark at his desk, packing a box. He looked up as I approached, his face a mixture of shock and resentment. He knew I knew, and he knew I had won. He said nothing. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The title on my new office door, the team that would now report to me, the Catalyst project that was now firmly under my command, they spoke louder than any words. He had taken credit for my idea at a presentation. A month later, I took over his department and the future of the idea he had tried to steal. The view from the director's office was much, much better.